Ah, the silence. The great, maddening, deafening silence. If you've ever been on a twin flame journey, you know exactly what I mean. One moment, the connection is electric, undeniable, consuming, like you're breathing in each other's souls. And then, just like that, silence. No calls, no messages. Sometimes even complete blockages, like you never even existed in their world. And the irony? This silence often creeps in just as you feel like you're nearing some kind of breakthrough, like all the chaos and separation were leading up to a reunion, a homecoming. So, why does this happen? Why do twin flames go silent, cut off contact, and disappear just when they're on the verge of something so profound? Well, let's talk about it. One of the biggest reasons is fear. Not just any fear, the kind that shakes you to your core. Twin flames don't just love each other. They see each other. They reflect back all the unhealed wounds, the deep-seated insecurities, the fears of abandonment, unworthiness, or even losing themselves in something bigger than they ever imagined. And when reunion starts feeling real, that intensity becomes almost unbearable. It's not just about being with someone you love, it's about facing the parts of yourself you've been avoiding your entire life. Imagine looking into a mirror that doesn't just show your face, but every hidden emotion, every suppressed memory, every past heartbreak and betrayal. That's what twin flames do for each other. And for many, the instinctive reaction is to run, to retreat into silence, because confronting all of that at once can feel like too much. Then there's the ego. Oh, the ego loves to get involved in the twin flame dynamic. The connection itself is so divinely orchestrated, so beyond human logic, that the ego panics. It craves control, certainty, structure. But twin flames? They defy all of that. And when reunion feels imminent, the ego kicks up its defenses. What if they don't feel the same way? What if I'm just imagining this? What if I let them in and they destroy me? The ego would rather shut down completely than risk the unknown. Silence becomes a protective shield, a way to regain a false sense of control. But here's the thing. Silence isn't just about fear or avoidance. Sometimes it's necessary. Twin flames don't just meet to have a perfect fairy tale love story. They come together to awaken, to evolve, to break cycles that have been repeating for lifetimes. And that kind of transformation, it doesn't happen overnight. If one or both flames are still carrying heavy wounds, childhood trauma, toxic patterns, limiting beliefs, then the connection can't fully come into union until those things are acknowledged and healed. Silence often serves as a cocoon, a sacred pause where the soul does its deepest work. Think about it like this. If you're about to climb a mountain, but you're carrying a backpack full of heavy rocks, you're not going to make it to the top. The silence forces both flames to stop, unpack, and lighten their load, so they can actually make the journey together. But that doesn't mean it's easy. Silence feels like a kind of death. It triggers every fear of loss, every abandonment wound, every doubt that maybe this was all in your head. And yet somehow, in the depths of that silence, something shifts. The connection doesn't die. It transforms. It burns away the illusions, the attachments, the need for validation. It forces both flames to go inward, to find the love within themselves first, so that when they do reunite, it's from a place of wholeness rather than desperation. And when that happens, when both have done the inner work, faced their fears, and surrendered to the journey, that's when the silence breaks. That's when reunion becomes inevitable. But until then, the silence isn't rejection. It's preparation. And that's the hardest part to accept, isn't it? that the silence isn't punishment. It isn't abandonment. It's not even about you, at least not in the way the mind wants to believe. It's preparation. It's transformation. But when you're in the thick of it, when the absence feels unbearable, none of that really brings much comfort. Because let's be real, when your twin flame goes silent, it doesn't just feel like any ordinary separation. It feels like losing a piece of yourself. And maybe, in a way, you are, because this journey isn't about finding completion in another person. It's about dismantling every illusion that told you you were ever incomplete to begin with. And silence? It forces you into that realization. When your twin flame cuts off contact, it can trigger every wound you've ever buried. Suddenly, it's not just about them not responding. It's about every time you felt unchosen, every time you felt invisible, every time love felt just out of reach. And that's the point. The silence isn't just about them. It's about what it awakens in you. So what do you do with that? At first, the mind wants to chase, to fix, to seek reassurance, to find an answer. But twin flame silence doesn't respond to force. It doesn't break with more messages, more overanalyzing, more begging the universe for signs. It only breaks when you surrender. And I don't mean giving up. Surrender isn't about walking away from the connection. It's about releasing the need to control it. Because here's the truth. Twin flames don't truly leave each other. Not in the way the physical mind perceives it. They might disappear from the surface, but energetically, the bond never wavers. In fact, the silence often makes it stronger. Because in that quiet space, all the external noise falls away. The distractions, the fears, the doubts, they all get stripped back until all that remains is the raw, unfiltered connection between your souls. That's why, even in the silence, you still feel them. You dream of them. You hear their voice in your mind. You get sudden waves of emotion out of nowhere. And you just know they're thinking of you too. Because they are. Even if they don't reach out. Even if they've convinced themselves they can live without this. Even if they seem perfectly fine on the outside. The silence isn't absence. It's a recalibration. And that's why it often happens right before reunion. Because the universe is aligning things in a way the human mind can't yet comprehend. Think of it like this. Before a bow can shoot an arrow forward, it has to be pulled back. The same thing happens with twin flames. That final silence, that last stretch of separation, is the pullback. It's the moment before everything is released, before the energy finally surges forward. But that moment requires patience. It requires trust. It requires sitting with the discomfort without trying to force a resolution. Because when it's time, when both flames are truly ready, the silence won't just break. It will dissolve. And when that happens, the reunion doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like someone finally caving in. It feels like two energies naturally finding their way back to each other, because they always were. But until then, the silence serves its purpose. It prepares. It clears space. It heals. And the best thing you can do in that silence? Keep living. Keep healing. Keep trusting. Because just as much as you feel them in your heart, they feel you too. And when the time is right, that knowing will be enough to bring you back together. And when that moment comes, when the silence finally breaks, it won't be with fireworks and dramatic declarations, though the connection itself will feel just as intense as ever. Instead, it will unfold in the only way it ever truly could, naturally, effortlessly, as if the time apart never really existed. Because in many ways it didn't. The silence was never about distance. It was never about endings. It was about alignment, about making space for a reunion that wasn't just based on longing, but on readiness, on truth, on two souls finally meeting each other without the weight of past wounds clouding their vision. That's why forcing a twin flame connection never works. You can chase. You can demand answers. You can try to pull them back before they're ready. But all that does is prolong the silence, because what's meant to align will only do so when the time is right. And you can't rush divine timing. So, what do you do in the waiting? You heal. You turn inward. You allow yourself to feel the ache without letting it consume you. You trust that whatever is happening, however painful, is shaping you into the version of yourself that your soul came here to become. Because here's the paradox. The silence teaches you what no amount of presence ever could. It strips you down to the rawest, most vulnerable version of yourself. It forces you to confront your own shadows, your fears, your deep-seated patterns of attachment and avoidance. It shows you, in the most unrelenting way, that this journey was never about them coming back. It was about you coming back to yourself. And when you do, when you finally reach that place where the love within you feels whole, whether they return or not, that's when the energy shifts. That's when the silence, once so suffocating, turns into something sacred, something you no longer fear but understand. Because you know that if this connection is real, and you feel it in your bones that it is, then no amount of time or distance can truly sever it. They will feel your growth. They will sense your peace. And when the time is right, they will return, not because you needed them to, but because the connection itself was always guiding you back together. But here's the final truth. By the time reunion happens, you'll have changed. You'll no longer be the person who once ached for their return in desperation. You'll be whole within yourself. And that wholeness, that's the real reunion. Because the twin flame journey was never just about union with another soul. It was about union within, and that's the moment everything shifts. Not because you chased. Not because you spent sleepless nights trying to decode every sign, every dream, every fleeting moment of telepathic connection. But because you finally surrendered, not in defeat, but in trust. Trust that what is meant for you will never truly be lost. Trust that love, real, soul-deep love, doesn't require force, only alignment. Trust that this connection, no matter how painful, has been shaping you into the person you were always meant to become. And when your twin flame finally reappears, when the silence lifts and their energy finds its way back to you, it won't be with uncertainty. It won't be with hesitation. It won't be with the same cycles that once kept you apart. Because something within both of you will have changed. Maybe they'll reach out casually, as if no time has passed, unaware of the storms you both endured in the quiet. Maybe they'll confess everything they couldn't say before, finally ready to face what they ran from. Maybe they'll show up in a way that is so unexpected, so beyond what you had imagined, that you'll know this was always orchestrated beyond your control. And yet, the biggest surprise won't be their return. It will be you, because by then, you will have learned the one truth that this journey was always trying to teach you. The love you thought you were waiting for was never truly outside of you. It was never in their words, their presence, their validation. It was in you all along. And in that realization, you'll understand that reunion was never about the moment they came back. It was about the moment you became whole within yourself. And when that happens, when two souls meet again from a place of wholeness instead of need, that's when the real journey begins. Because now, the love is no longer clouded by fear, by wounds, by the illusion of separation. Now it is clear. Now it is steady. Now it is free. And whether you walk forward together or not, you'll know this love was never meant to be ordinary. It was meant to transform you. And that is the true purpose of the twin flame journey. And now, standing at the edge of everything you've been through, you see it clearly. The silence, the separation, the endless waves of surrender. It was never working against you. It was working through you. Every moment of longing, every unanswered question, every time you wanted to reach out but held yourself back because something deep inside whispered, "Not yet." It all had a purpose, because the twin flame journey isn't about the love story we imagine. It's not about two people finding each other and never letting go. It's about evolution. It's about breaking down every version of yourself that was built on fear, on attachment, on the belief that love has to come from outside of you to be real. And that's why twin flames go silent. That's why they cut off contact. Not because the love is gone, but because the energy between you isn't yet fully aligned. Because something within still needs to be healed, still needs to be remembered. And what needs to be remembered? That this isn't about chasing. It isn't about timelines. It isn't about proving anything to anyone, even to yourself. It's about trust. And trust at its core is not something you can force. It's something you grow into, something you embody. When your twin flame goes silent, they're giving you the greatest opportunity of all, to step into that trust, to stop looking outward for reassurance and start looking inward for truth, to stop waiting for them to return before you allow yourself to feel whole. Because the real secret, reunion doesn't happen when the separation ends. It happens when you no longer need reunion to feel complete. And that is the paradox of this journey. The moment you stop looking for them to come back is the moment the energy shifts in a way that allows them to. Not because you've given up, but because you've let go. Let go of the fear. Let go of the expectation. Let go of the belief that love has to look a certain way to be real. And in that letting go, you make space. You make space for love to return, not as a desperate need, but as a choice. Not as a rescue, but as a reflection of the love you have already cultivated within yourself. And when your twin flame does come back, if and when the time is right, you will know that it's not because they were missing from you. It's because you both finally found yourselves. That's what the silence was for. That's what this entire journey was leading to. Not just a reunion with them, a reunion with you. And that's the moment everything softens. The urgency fades. The waiting dissolves. The ache that once felt unbearable now feels like something else entirely, like gratitude, like peace, like the quiet knowing that nothing was ever truly lost. Because now you understand, the silence wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to build you. To shape you into the version of yourself that no longer seeks love from a place of lack, but from a place of wholeness. You see, twin flames aren't just here to love each other. They're here to awaken each other, to strip away the illusions, the old wounds, the beliefs that kept them small. An awakening is not gentle. It's not comfortable. It's messy and painful and often feels like destruction before it ever feels like rebirth. But that's exactly what it is. A rebirth, a homecoming, a remembering of the truth that was always there beneath the fear. That love was never outside of you. It was never something you had to chase, to earn, to prove yourself worthy of. It was you. It is you. And the moment you embody that fully, the entire dynamic shifts. Because now, your energy no longer vibrates with desperation or fear. Now, you are standing in your power. Now you are radiating the kind of love that isn't searching, but simply is. And that's when everything aligns. Not because you willed it to, not because you figured out the right words, the perfect timing, the secret formula to bring them back, but because you finally stepped into the truth of who you are. And your twin flame? They feel that. They always have. Even in the silence. Even in the distance. Even in the moments when it seemed like they had forgotten you entirely. Because how could they forget something that is a part of them? They needed the silence just as much as you did. They needed the space to battle their own demons, to confront their own fears, to heal the parts of themselves they couldn't bring into union. And when they do return, when the silence lifts and the energy between you finds its way home, you'll realize something profound. It was never about the waiting. It was never about the suffering. It was about becoming. Becoming the person who no longer fears the silence because they trust the connection. Becoming the person who no longer needs reassurance because they know the love is real. Becoming the person who no longer searches outside themselves because they have found everything they ever needed within. And that is the real reunion. That is the love you've been seeking all along. So if you are in the silence now, if you are aching for answers, for a sign, for some kind of relief, know this. You are not being abandoned. You are being prepared. And when the time is right, when you have stepped fully into the love that you are, the silence will break. The energy will shift. And whether they return in the way you once imagined or in a way you never expected, you will know it was always meant to be this way. Because love, real love, never leaves. It only transforms. And in that transformation, you find everything you were ever meant to be. And now, as you stand on the other side of all that silence, all that waiting, all that deep, soul-stretching transformation, you finally see. It was never about reunion in the way your mind once thought. It was never about just being together again. Never about erasing the pain with a perfect ending. It was about the journey back to you. Because the truth is, twin flames don't come together to complete each other. They come together to awaken, to burn away everything that is not real, to challenge every belief, every fear, every illusion that has kept them from stepping fully into who they are. And that's why they separate. That's why they go silent. Not as a punishment, not as a rejection, but as a sacred initiation, a journey into the deepest layers of self-love, of healing, of becoming. And now you understand why it had to happen this way, why they couldn't stay before, why they needed space, why the silence was not an ending, but a rebirth. Because if they had stayed when you still carried those wounds, when you still believed that love had to come from outside of you to be real, you would have built something fragile, something based on fear rather than truth, something that could not stand in the light of what this connection was truly meant to be. But now everything is different because you are different. You no longer need them to return in order to feel whole. You no longer fear the silence because you understand its purpose. You no longer question the connection because you know. And in that knowing, you are free. Free to love without attachment. Free to trust without fear. Free to let this journey unfold exactly as it is meant to, without force, without desperation, without trying to control what was always guided by something greater than you. And that is when the silence breaks. Not because you willed it to, not because you chased or begged or tried to fix what was never broken, but because the energy has shifted, because the work has been done, because the connection, once tangled in fear and longing, is now clear, steady, open. And when they return, and they will in the way and time that is meant for you. You will welcome them, not from a place of need, but from a place of peace. From a place of knowing that this love was never about possession, but about expansion. And whether you walk forward together or simply hold the connection in your heart, you will understand. The reunion was never about the two of you finding each other again. It was about finding yourselves. And in that, you have already won. Because love, true, soul-etched love, was never something to be found. It was something to be remembered,